the United States, and then we've done a lot more water filtration systems. We provide a lot of the water filters for the Navy, just the actual filters, distribution, and we, as a spin-off, we also build fuel hoses, which, why fuel hoses? Because water and fuel are liquid. It seems the systems are very similar, and the opportunity presented itself. You go where the business is. And that's as short as I can get the speech down. Sorry if it was too long.
So I understand that the solar panels are there to run the pumping. You've got so you're pumping water from the wells or the rivers into the villages that are off the water grid, and that's what you're using the panels for?
Yeah, so we do well pumping systems and we do river pumping systems. Well pumping systems down to a depth of 100 meters, but lifting water takes a lot of energy. So when you get down to that kind of depth, do it on solar unless you really want to have a large array. It's just it's a simple mathematical equation. You get your systems down to where we're producing about only 1,000 meters per hour on those kind of systems. We only do during the daylight. We only pump during the daylight. Our systems, you can build battery system that will run 24 hours a day. However, the costs go up pretty exponentially. Whether you use lead acid, you're going to have a limited life cycle, and limited, you can drain them down. Or if you're using one of the new technologies, say lithium phosphates, which is a great technology, but the costs are still very high. It's probably 10 to 15 times as expensive as lead acid batteries, and that cost was a big limitation for us on the systems. But yes, we do use solar. It's pumping water through filters to make clean water, in simple terms. And we apply variable speed motors and all that stuff to keep it down as low energy as possible. I'll let the next person go up.
I have to start a timer, or else I will keep talking. I'm going to try my best to give you a quick introduction to AGAS and what we're doing on smartgrid. First, I'd like to acknowledge both the veterans and the active duty service members in the audience. I really appreciate your service and really admire what you all do. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and just kick right into it. Smart grid is something that is pretty loosely defined, and to sdge it means a number of different things. To many others, it's going to mean other things. I just got out of a meeting with a appliance manufacturer this afternoon. Smart grid to them is really all about what happens in customers' homes, right? What happens on the washers, the dryers, the refrigerators. To us, it's really about taking a basket of different kinds of technologies, both existing ones and ones that we're developing in cooperation with manufacturers, technology companies, and others to do some of those things that I have up here on the slide. Improve public safety, improve our workers' productivity and their own safety, empower consumers with energy information. It's going to open up new services that are going to allow them to make all sorts of new decisions or not, as the case may be. And ultimately participating in energy markets, which are not a reality yet, but will be in the near future. And then, of course, improving our reliability, resiliency, and security of our grid, all of which are really needed to keep up with some of the pace of the other things that are happening out there. And these are really sort of the main three drivers that we focus on as we're developing our strategies and our programs. We really started from the bottom. It was really about the grid initially, really trying to make it a hardened grid, make it more reliable, less susceptible to outages, adding technology and connectivity in ways that wouldn't allow bad guys to get in and shut off the lights in one of the 10 largest cities in the U.S. The environment became, a real big focus as California in particular developed energy policies that were very, very aggressive compared to national energy policy, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020, even beyond that, or 80% beyond that by 2050. The renewable portfolio standards, which require investor-owned utilities like ourselves to procure a certain amount of renewable energy that's delivered to customers, and that's going to be 33% by year 2020. Supporting the rollout of the plug-in electric vehicle fleet, which is particularly pronounced here in San Diego, and continuing to grow all the time on a daily basis. And then finally, really, it's been around the customers most recently. It's been a real focus as energy information has become available through the use of smart meters, being opened to third parties to develop applications on and can actually provide useful services to customers that we as the utility really just don't have the ability to do. Listing up some of those kinds of things around control of appliances, making things more efficient in the home, but doing so with with information and not just different types of light bulb insulation or other kinds of materials and other solutions you've heard about in our tour. So, around the urgency, customer empowerment being one thing. Certainly, customers are buying solar photovoltaics, they're buying electric vehicles, they're demanding a more green energy mix, they're looking for a better environment for the future, and it's really that customer pull across all of these areas that are creating the sense of urgency that we have around building a smarter grid. But as we do that, it becomes a lot more complex, and to do that with sort of the same level of resources that we have today, we really have to leverage technology. It's really that force multiplier, to borrow a term from the military, that allows us to take the same people and make them much more productive and much more powerful when it comes to managing our system. All of you that live in San Diego, for the most part, with few exceptions, now have smart meters on your homes. All of you that have smart meters have the ability to go onto our website every day and be able to see your energy usage data up to the previous day. It does have a little bit of a lag. It's not a real-time interface just yet, but this is sort of the validated data that we pull off of our network and process through our systems and ultimately shows up on your bill. But instead of showing up a few days after we come out and read your meter with somebody who stops by in a truck, now we're reading meters essentially over a network, a communication system, on a daily basis, pulling that data back in, putting it through those systems and publishing it available for your use, and ultimately so that you can share it with others. And those others might be third parties that create useful applications for you, for example, to in some cases, folks might want to be able to post their information on their Facebook page, participate in games or other kinds of competitions that are based on that kind of information. And other folks just want to be more efficient, they just want to save money on their bills. Still others really aren't interested in any of this stuff at all and really want to remain passive and are going to get sort of the same accurate billing that we hope to have had over the past century as we've been using those old analog meters. This is how we're sort of viewing what that connected home of the future is going to look like. There's going to be very few that have all of these things deployed to a single residence, but some combination of these is showing up at more and more houses already today. Certainly high efficiency air conditioning, variable speed pool pumps, which Corey pointed out, much more energy efficient way to move water around. Lots and lots of solar panels on people's roofs. We have about 17,000 customers today that have rooftop solar photovoltaic systems. We're definitely seeing more electric vehicles out there. There's about 1,500 or so in San Diego on the system now. And we're just starting now to see much more use of those consumer portals, mobile applications, and the in-home kinds of technologies that we saw in the smart home demonstration. We stopped by there for our tour? I don't think we stopped by in the front. But those are the kinds of displays that will give you sort of a real-time read of information about what's being used in the house. And depending on the technology that you choose, it may be sort of on an aggregated basis for the whole house. But there's other ones out there that you can start looking at things on a circuit-by-circuit basis to kind of give you an idea of what's happening in each individual room. And ultimately, you'll be able to see individual appliances that are able to communicate with your computers in your home entertainment systems, and other ways to actually view this data. On the centralized renewable side, the bulk of our energy doesn't come from those rooftop solar panels today. only about 1, maybe 2%, depending on the time of day, time of the year. This is really the mix of most of the energy in San Diego. Now, I'll give this one caveat, and that is to say that we did this chart before the San Onofre nuclear generation station went out of service earlier this year because they had a pretty serious equipment issue that they have to deal with. And because there was a small radiation leak up there, they took the plant out of service for safety purposes, and they won't even have a plan to restart it until sometime later this summer. So there does a substantial portion of this mix here is nuclear. On a regular year, that would remain the case. This year is going to be a little bit different, particularly this summer. But they do expect that plant to come back online at some point. And nuclear energy is a part of our future in all likelihood. It's carbon-free generation, despite the problems with waste storage and transport and things like that. From a generation perspective, it is carbon-free, just like the other renewables that we have shown down below it. Coal is coming out of the portfolio here in San Diego. We have one, I think maybe 2 remaining contracts that are just about to expire, and after this year there will be no coal-fired energy used here in San Diego, which I think is fantastic. I'm really glad that we finally reached that milestone. We're also showing, a really significant growth in both solar and wind sources. Just this last weekend, sdge energized its second 500 kilovolt transmission line. This is the big transmission line that extends from central San Diego out to the eastern part of San Diego County and into the Imperial Valley Desert. And it's only the second such line that's here in San Diego. And without it this summer, we would have been running into real trouble because of the outage at San Onofre. However, now we have a lot more import capacity that will ultimately be bringing in renewable energy, primarily solar, from the Imperial Valley Desert. Because that line's now in service, it means that developers are building those large-scale projects out in the desert are going to start getting those things underway now, if they haven't already. The wind projects are going to be starting up as well, both in eastern San Diego County, Imperial Valley, and out into northern Baja California, where there's a cross-border transmission line that will ultimately be upgraded and start pulling renewable energy from there as well. We have an obligation as a California investor-owned utility to deliver 33% of the energy to you all by the year 2020 from these renewable resources. It doesn't count distributed solar that's on people's rooftops, and it doesn't count any hydroelectric power contracts that we might have in other areas. It's really going to be around solar and wind. When you combine it with the rapid growth around rooftop solar, it starts looking like a much more renewable-oriented kind of power mix. Moving now back over to the distributed side. This chart doesn't show up very well, but that's a scale that goes out to 2011 on the right. This is really customer-owned solar. Again, we have about 17,000 customers with solar today, and it's doubling about every 2 years, which is really fantastic. We really want to encourage that growth and hope to see it continue. Question to that?
Yeah, on your previous
Yes,
slide, there is no mention of what units of measurement you have. So you have 5 million to 25 million watt. Are they kilowatts?
I'm sorry, those are megawatt hours.
So megawatt, 25 million megawatts.
Megawatt hours.
Hours. Okay. And just for your next.
Yeah, so those are production. And so megawatts on the y-axis over there. This one is more in terms of capacity. So this is just the residential side. We do have a number of commercial customers that also have about the same amount of solar capacity installed on buildings and on other commercial property. We're at about 140 or so megawatts total on the system now, and so halfway through 2012. And again, doubling about roughly every year. This is not without its concerns, and a great deal of our smart grid program has to do with the integration of intermittent resources like solar and wind. Despite our best efforts to use technologies like solar trackers and smarter and better inverters that take that direct current electricity and make it useful alternating current electricity for the grid, we still find that there are significant fluctuations in the actual output of these kinds of systems. And this is a pretty data-intensive graph, but just very briefly, this is a one-day shot of the top graph where we've zoomed in about 10 minutes of 1 second data on the bottom graph. And this is a system that's 1 megawatt in size. That's a large solar array. 1 megawatt of solar panels covers about 6 to 7 acres of flat land. And you know, this is not typical of a residential generator, but it is closer to one of the typical commercial ones. And what we see here really is a really significant change in voltage. And voltage is equivalent to the pressure in the pipe on a water system. It's essentially the rate, you know, that's just the best analogy I can use. So what we do as the power company is we keep the voltage and the frequency, which is how many times per second that it actually cycles, which is exactly 60, constant and steady. And to do that, we have to keep supply and demand of electricity in constant balance, essentially in real time. And so what we are concerned with as the growth of solar continues, particularly in some areas where it's particularly concentrated, we have to go in and we have to put in some mitigating measures to make sure that the changes in voltage that are created by solar and other intermittent technologies don't affect service for everyone else. And so smart grid technologies are one way that we'll actually go about doing that. This is just a quick shot of sort of a little over 4 months ago of where the electric vehicles and solar systems are throughout the service territory. They are, you know, sort of concentrated around population areas, as you can see, but you know, even all the way to the coast, you know, there's a tremendous amount of solar, and there's various demographic and socioeconomic kinds of reasons that you know, more people in, you know, wealthier areas can afford the capital requirement to install solar systems, and they often have higher power bills, which changes the business case of why they don't do that in the first place. But you know, anybody that's here in May and June of any year knows that the coast is often pretty socked in for you know, a good portion of the day, even during, you know, sort of the summer solstice like today, where, you know, solar output would be at its peak. So as that green layer coastal eddy condition burns off, that's really where we see that that change in system conditions most acute, and really why we spend a lot of time. And we have 2 full-time meteorologists on staff at sdge, in addition to things like a full-time fire crew, along with our own private helicopter, which is a heavy-lift water dock helicopter that we use both for construction and for firefighting. Why we're paying so much attention to the weather, it relates not only to our fire risks and our fire risk mitigation, but also to the actual generation on the system. So weather's just a huge, huge effort for us. On the electric vehicle side, again, you know, we have about, now it's 1,500 EVs on the system. There's not a lot of public charging options out there, so we're not seeing the pace of adoption that I think that we would see if there were more and easier ways for folks to get their vehicles charged on the road. I know that's true for myself. But what we are seeing is that, you know, through pricing and through basically time of use rates, which are a time-based way for us to charge for electricity, so that you pay more at times of the day when we buy the more expensive wholesale market electricity. And if we offer rates that encourage people to charge their vehicles overnight, which puts a lot of demand on the system, offering them a low rate puts it to that low use period, relieves the stress on the grid, and again will let us accommodate more and more of those vehicles at really minimal investment, using the assets that we already have more efficiently. One of the things that's happened here in San Diego because of our commitment to EVs and their adoption is that Daimler, the German car company, chose San Diego for its first rollout of an electric vehicle car sharing fleet. Does anybody use Car2Go at all? So this is a really cool little service. I don't know if you've seen these little smart cars that are rolling around downtown San Diego and moving up into the beach areas. These vehicles can be rented by the minute. And since there's about 300 of them all over town, there's an iPhone app or an Android app that you can locate them with, or do it on the computer. You can basically just walk right up to one of these vehicles, scan your card on the windshield. It lets you in. You punch in a PIN code, and away you go. again, charged by the minute, 39 cents or something like that. Often cheaper than a cab, very convenient, has some dedicated parking around the city, park anywhere in the city for free, so no meters or anything like that, as long as you can park in the loading zone. So very cool service, definitely encourage you to check it out. Sort of switching back onto the industrial side, this is just one of the examples of what we are doing to help us automate our operations and make things more efficient. These very large transformers are pieces of equipment that are often found in substations. They cost anywhere from about $1 million to $3 million each, and they take anywhere from 18 to 36 months to procure. They're usually built in Asia or in parts of Scandinavia by a handful of companies. There's not a lot of spare equipment like this that's around, and the care and feeding of these types of devices is very important to us. The way that you measure the degradation in a piece of equipment like this is by looking at dissolved gases and the oils that are used to cool the excess heat that's on the equipment. And we used to have guys that would go around once every 6 months and they would stick a dipstick into the tank and they would fill up a few vials and they would package it up and then send it off to a lab. A few weeks later we would get results about what the contents were of that oil. By adding sensors, by adding communications, and by installing these kinds of things on all of this type of equipment, we can now do that in real time. We have this data constantly available to operators, to planners, to the asset managers now that can extend the life of these devices often by years. And again, this is a way for us to get more out of the assets that we have rather than going out and buying new ones just because it's time. I'm going to quickly finish up. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to go to this last project that we have out in Borrego Springs. It's a desert community out in the eastern part of San Diego County. They're connected by a single transmission line that's prone to outage. And so what we're doing here is we're doing one of the largest full-scale microgrid projects happening, at least in the private sector in the country. The military does have a number of these happening in bases around the country and really around the world. For energy security purposes. And for the same reason, we're looking at doing this in not only this desert community, but others, particularly those that are prone to fire danger, where loss of utility power can then be met for emergency services, basic public safety, basic communications and things like this by having local generation, local energy storage systems, demand management so that we can make sure that the maximum conservation measures are put into effect. And ultimately, we'd like to be able to island a community like this. And essentially, even though they're cut off from the rest of the sdge grid, they're able to continue minimally with basic services, ideally carrying their entire community based on these distributed resources. We're actually doing some maintenance out on that line here in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to have our first test of this. We actually expect to be able to carry at least a couple of circuits, potentially the whole community overnight, which is really exciting. Finally, just to sort of plug for our plan, those of you that have companies that are interested in working with sdge, anybody that's interested in understanding what sdge is doing in the future and maybe interested in employment opportunities or other opportunities to work with the company, definitely encourage you to take a look at what our roadmap looks like for smart grid. There's a lot of projects, a lot of information out there on the web that can at least familiarize yourself with what we're doing and where we're going, and potentially see if it's a good fit for you. So, I pretty much stayed on time. Thanks very much.
I'm going to start my timer too.